Well, there is an NDP cabinet minister. His name is Justin Trudeau. Let's face it, he is an NDP prime minister. We have to be the party that can protect the value, the purchasing power of the paycheck. I will be running on a platform to make the government affordable so that your life is affordable.
His launch for the Conservative leadership went off like a rocket a couple of months back. Pierre Poilievre continues to crisscross the country looking for support in all corners. But the big question I have for him as he joins me now is, why is he running? Pierre, thanks for taking some time, and let me jump in with that question. Why are you running to be leader of the Conservative Party of Canada?
To put people back in control of their lives by making Canada the freest country on earth.
Okay, so flesh that out a bit. What does that mean? Give people back control of their lives. When I've seen you make that statement, I see the social media reaction. I shouldn't have to be given control. There's people angry over COVID measures. There's people talking about economic issues. What do you mean by that?
Well, people feel like they've lost control of their lives right now. Let's start with COVID. You have the teenagers who are clinically depressed because they've been deprived of sporting and social activities, small business owners who've been wiped out by shutdown after shutdown, federal workers who lost their jobs because they made a personal medical decision that was different than the one the government tried to impose. And that is just COVID. Then there's the economic control people have lost. The 32-year-old who can't control where he lives because it's $868,000 for the typical home. So he's stuck living in his mom's basement. Or the single mom who can't afford the grocery bill. And so she's among the 4 in 5 households that have cut the quality or quantity of their diet because they can't afford what they want to eat. They can't control their diets now. Or you've got the fact that the gatekeepers have shut out people from their livelihoods, gatekeepers that block immigrants from working in the professions and trades for which they were trained, that block our First Nations from inviting resource development and business and paychecks onto their communities. The gatekeepers who have prevented new housing construction to protect existing homeowners, all of these gatekeepers. So we need to basically remove the gatekeepers and let people take back control of their lives. On housing, so you said housing, you're right. The big part of the problem is federal, and that is the money printing. This incredible orgy of cash creation that funneled into the mortgage system and bid up housing prices. The wealthiest people got that money, they borrowed it, bought houses, bid up prices. I'm ending that, and you'll be hearing more specifics about my plan to protect Canadians from future inflationary money printing. But at a local level, it takes 7 years to get a building permit from the time you buy to the time you build. And that's why we have the lowest number of housing units per capita in the G7, which is crazy given that we have the biggest country in the G7, the most land. So what am I going to do? I'm going to use infrastructure money to leverage my demand to the municipalities to speed up building permits and make more available land. And I'm going to be very blunt with the municipal, particularly the big city mayors. So the small town leaders are not the problem. The big city mayors say, look, you keep asking us for more money. If you want more money, what you really need to do is allow for the construction of more housing, because then you'll have more taxpayers and you'll have more people working. And that will generate the revenue you need. But if you want more federal infrastructure money, you're going to have to allow for more housing construction. And I'll have some very specific proposals on that as well. Remove the gatekeepers, stop printing money, start building houses.
It's incredible to watch down here in Toronto. I experienced it in Ottawa, nearly 20 years there. The ability of municipal leaders and small activist groups to demand more housing, just not where I am. And the NIMBYism is crazy. So you mentioned printing money and out of control spending. We just got news of this coalition. to me, this is taking out of control spending and injecting it with the biggest vial of steroids you can find. What are your thoughts on the NDP Liberal pact? They keep saying it's not a coalition because, well, there's no NDP cabinet ministers, but a duck is a duck. What's your reaction to it?
Yeah. Well, there is an NDP cabinet minister. His name is Justin Trudeau. Let's face it, he is an NDP prime minister. He is so out of touch with the traditional liberal approach of the Chrétien Martin era, where back then, there was a consensus between conservatives and liberals that we needed balanced budgets, free markets, private enterprise, free trade, etc. Now we have the most radical and extreme economic agenda maybe ever in Canadian history, perhaps worse than his father. And there'll be more incentive for him to spend, to grow the state and to control people's lives. And I think that here's the brick wall they're headed for, though, Brian: rising interest rates. Right now, if interest rates go up even 1 percentage point, it's an extra $12 billion in expense. So if rates were to go up sort of 2-3 points, we'd be talking about 24 or 36 billion dollars in repeated annual expenditures just to pay the bankers. And I think the era of easy money might be coming to an end because high inflation is going to drive up rates.
And the rates you're talking about are historically low, even if it does go up by 2 to 3 points. That's still low interest rates from what my parents dealt with what previous governments have dealt with, what previous generations. We have just been extremely lucky for the last close to 2 decades to have interest rates as low as they are, and it has made spending easy. This is going to take it to the next level, though, in terms of the Trudeau government's spending levels. I think it will turn off voters. You mentioned Chrétien Martin era consensus. Is there an opportunity for you or others in the Conservative Party to reach out to fiscally responsible liberals who are now looking around and saying, I don't got a party anymore. My party went and joined the NDP? Because to me, that Trudeau's abandoned the center. I think there's an opportunity there, but I do hear from a lot of conservatives who say, no, if you're not 100% with us, we don't need you. Don't become liberal light. Don't go, don't appease the center. To me, it looks like there's a big opportunity. What's your take on how you approach those people who now feel abandoned?
Well, I call them the common sense voters. They live in the suburbs. They understand that budgets don't balance themselves. They often shop around before they vote. They're interested in hard work, paying off their mortgages, getting their families on a solid financial footing for the future. They vote. They voted mostly for the Harper government. They voted for Doug Ford. And they voted in the suburbs for Trudeau in his early term. I think those people have now been abandoned by the Liberal Party, and they are available to us. The way we win them is by being the party of the paycheck. It's not about by positioning ourselves at this optimal spot on the political spectrum, because as I've said to you before, the political spectrum does not exist in the real world. But what does exist in the real world is a paycheck. And we have to be the party that can protect the value, the purchasing power of the paycheck. That will be the single biggest issue in the suburbs in the next election. People have paychecks, but those paychecks are diminishing in value because of out of control inflation, as I call it, Justin-flation. And I have a common sense plan to make paychecks more powerful and to bring inflation down to the ground so that people can get ahead through hard work.
The sense that I get from voters like you're describing is that the desire maybe for balanced books is not as strong as it once was, because they're just worried about their paycheck. They're worried about inflation. They just want to know, is there an opportunity? I think that's the future on economic side for the Conservatives, is how do you get people to the point where they feel like they have an opportunity, they feel like they have a paycheck. Okay, now things are good. We can look after the federal books. We can balance them. Once I'm not panicked about absolutely everything. How do you get people to that point? What policies are you looking for to protect the paycheck, to give people a sense of economic optimism again?
So, first of all, I think the reason why people weren't worried about deficits is because both interest rates and inflation were low for a very long time. When we've seen historically that when interest rates rise and inflation goes up, then people start to worry about deficits because they start to experience it, right? Like reading about a multi-billion-dollar deficit in Ottawa is an abstraction if you're not paying for it. But deficits are now driving inflation. There's no debate about that. The parliamentary budget officer testified to that effect in committee about 2 months ago. And he said that the additional $100 billion that the Trudeau government plans to pile on to its budget spending over the next 3 years will be inflationary. So now people are paying for the deficit in real time, not down the road sometime, but in the present situation. So I think the case for returning to balanced budgets and common sense is stronger than ever before. And as interest rates rise, it will get stronger still because, of course, deficits increase interest rates because governments compete for scarce credit and drive up rates when they're borrowing a lot of money. So I will be running on a platform to make the government affordable so that your life is affordable.
Is that the main way that you make life affordable and protect the paycheck? Because that's what I'm trying to figure out. How do you protect the paycheck? How do you give people economic opportunity at a time when things are precarious around the whole world, but here in Canada too, precarious?
Yes. Well, first of all, we have to stop the inflationary deficits and taxes. I will cancel the carbon tax on gas, home heating, and fuel. That tax has never been more unpopular than it is now. It's going up on April 1st. This is where I disagree with two of my leadership contenders. They support the carbon tax. I oppose it. And we need to be the party of low consumption taxes to make things more affordable so paychecks go further. But in addition to that, we have to start creating more of the stuff cash buys. If we generate more energy in Canada, grow more affordable food, and remove the gatekeepers to build more houses, then we'll have greater supply of those goods that money buys and make them more affordable. One of the reasons why gas is so expensive right now is because our dollar is low. Brian, you remember back in 2014 when oil was 110, we were at parity with the Americans dollar, right? Because oil and therefore gasoline is priced in US dollars, when we have a low dollar, we have high gas prices. We have a higher dollar, we have lower gas prices. So if we were at parity today, our gas prices would be 25% cheaper because the purchasing power of our dollar would be more powerful. And that's what we need to do, is unleash the productive forces of our economy to sell more goods into the world market, thus raising the purchasing power of the Canadian dollar and lowering the cost of living for our people.
I want to ask you about two unrelated issues off the economic front. There is I'm not sure where things are going in terms of Bill 21, but there's a bit of a spat with that a week or so ago. But you came out against Bill 21 in 2020. Remember you being on Mario Dumont's show, doing an interview, talking about how you're opposed to the bill. It's becoming an issue in the leadership race in a way that it wasn't previously, where everyone just wanted to tiptoe around Bill 21. What's your stance on it? This is the bill, for people that don't know, where public servants in Quebec are not allowed to wear religious symbols. A lot of people, including myself, find it incredibly discriminatory. What's your stance on it now?
I'm against it. I think it's wrong. I'm in favor of religious freedom, including the freedom of religious expression. I don't think government should tell people what to wear. While I recognize Quebec's right to make its own laws within provincial jurisdiction, I strongly encourage Quebecers to repeal this law.
Would you support a court challenge? There's government programs that exist to challenge laws in charter cases. Would you back that?
I think that the opposition should come from Quebecers themselves. I think it's more powerful when it does. So I think that is the best way to contest the bill in the courts. It's going to be a difficult legal contest because Quebec has already used the notwithstanding clause, which removes from play a number of the key sections of the charter that would have been used to contest the bill, particularly Section 2, which protects freedom of religion, etc. So it's going to be a difficult case to make in court, not an impossible one. I hope that it succeeds, but I think it's best if the contest comes from Quebecers themselves.
The biggest international issue right now is, of course, Ukraine, which is driving also some of the economic issues that we discussed, inflation, price of gas. It's going to impact the price of food. So much of the world's wheat, corn supply comes from Russia and Ukraine. So much of the fertilizer capacity comes from those two countries as well. Is Canada doing enough in terms of helping Ukraine? Should we be doing more? Should we be advocating for a no-fly zone? Ms. Bergen, the interim leader of the party, has said that she believes there should be at least over humanitarian corridors. Are we doing enough, and what would you do differently than the current prime minister is?
Well, the major difference I have with the current prime minister is that I believe that energy independence is a big missing piece in the strategy of the Western world. Of course, the reason that Putin was able to finance this military invasion is because he had such a lock on the European energy market. He was supplying the major European countries with natural gas and oil that Canada could be selling Europe. And so I think we need to expedite the approval of energy projects right across this country, starting with the LNG Newfoundland project, which would pump oil through a pipeline from the Jeanne d'Arc oil field to the coast of Newfoundland, where it'd be cooled to minus 161 degrees on a floating vessel, put on a ship and sent to Europe to help Europeans get off of Russian gas. I'd also indicate that I support reopening the LNG Saguenay project, and I do support, in principle, the idea of an east-west pipeline from Western Canada to the Irving refinery in St. John, so that we can not only supply East Coast Canada with Canadian oil, but also export more of our energy to Europe across the Atlantic. Newfoundland is the closest point in all of North America to Europe. And of course, the maritime provinces are not that much further. So we have an enormous transportation advantage. All that stands in the way, of course, is the government gatekeepers who've prevented us from developing our resources. So I would open the gates and allow more energy production so we can take back control of our energy.
It was shocking to me to watch Prime Minister Trudeau be asked that question while standing next to Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson, very committed to carbon taxes and climate change, stood there and said he would stand by all of those policies, but yes, he would increase domestic production. And Justin Trudeau talked about renewables. That was a shocking moment for me. Our European allies are calling out for more energy, and we're just not willing to give it. All right, drop a comment down below. Let us know what you think. And of course, share this on social media and subscribe to the channel.